a mop in her hands, dust on her boots. Nothing about her spoke of rank. But when the general walked by, he stopped, saluted, and called her captain, sending shockwaves down the hall. The helicopter hit hard in the Afghan mountains, rotors screaming against rock as insurgent bullets shredded the fuselage. Captain Elena, Viper Santos had 3 minutes to save 12 wounded Rangers before enemy forces overran their position. Blood covered her hands, smoke filled her lungs, and death surrounded her on all sides. But she had done what others couldn't. She had brought them all home. 6 months later, that same woman pushed a mop bucket down the sterile hallways of Walter Reed Medical Center, her combat boots squeaking against polished floors as cleaning solution sloshed with each step. At 5 feet 5 inches with black hair pulled into a simple ponytail and dark eyes that seemed to carry shadows from another world, she moved through her janitorial duties with the mechanical precision of someone who had learned to find purpose in the smallest tasks. Her hands gripped the mop handle with the same intensity she once reserved for medical instruments and weapons. She navigated around hospital equipment with practiced efficiency, and she maintained the kind of invisible presence that made doctors, nurses, and administrators walk past without a second glance. But Sergeant Williams, rolling patients down the corridor on gurneys, had noticed something unsettling about her technique. The way she positioned herself to observe all entry points while mopping. Her eyes constantly scanning for threats that didn't exist in a medical facility. And sometimes, late at night when the hospital was quiet, he caught her staring at the emergency room doors with an expression that suggested she was seeing something entirely different from their peaceful medical environment. The medical staff knew her only as part of the hospital's support infrastructure. The night janitor, when they needed spills cleaned up, cleaning lady, when discussing maintenance schedules among themselves, or simply ignored entirely when medical professionals were discussing patient care and treatment protocols. None of these doctors, nurses, and technicians had any reason to investigate the background of someone who clearly belonged to the custodial staff and posed no relevance to their life-saving medical work. Captain Santos's cleaning routine reinforced every assumption about her civilian employment status. She arrived during evening shifts when most administrative personnel had departed, systematically worked through assigned areas with methodical thoroughness, positioned herself in locations where she could work without disrupting medical operations, and maintain the kind of quiet efficiency that characterized dedicated support staff. Her behavior was completely appropriate for custodial work. Her presence was utterly unremarkable, and her civilian appearance was so convincing that even hospital security conducting routine patrols gave her no more attention than any other employee. Nurse practitioner Davis, working night shifts in the trauma ward, had observed something peculiar about the janitor's cleaning patterns around medical equipment. She didn't just clean surfaces, she inspected them with the kind of detailed attention that suggested familiarity with medical instruments and emergency procedures. Her movements around trauma bays weren't random maintenance activities. They followed systematic patterns that indicated understanding of medical workflows and operational requirements. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, completing late-night rounds through the intensive care unit, had caught something odd during his patient visits. The cleaning woman wasn't just mopping floors while he worked. She was unconsciously positioning herself where she could observe patient monitors and medical procedures. Her spatial awareness during medical emergencies seemed tactical rather than coincidental, and her reaction to crisis situations suggested training that went far beyond custodial responsibilities. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we discover that the most extraordinary warriors often serve in the most humble roles. Before we reveal this incredible story of hidden honor and concealed heroism, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from today. And if you believe that true service continues long after the uniforms come off, hit that subscribe button to support our mission. We're honored to share these remarkable stories of sacrificial courage with you. Walter Reed Medical Center's monthly command inspection was scheduled for 0800 hours, bringing together the hospital's most senior military leadership, civilian administrators, and medical department heads to review operations, patient care standards, and facility management that supported wounded warriors returning from combat zones worldwide. This quarterly inspection represented the highest levels of military medical oversight and operational assessment. Captain Santos drew her usual assignment for the inspection preparation, deep cleaning of administrative corridors, conference rooms, and executive areas where senior leadership would conduct their facility review. Her role was exactly what it had always been: ensure spotless conditions for military inspection, maintain sterile environments for medical operations, and provide the kind of invisible support that allowed medical professionals to focus on healing wounded service members. Among the inspection team's most distinguished members was Brigadier General Patricia "Iron Eagle" Morrison, a legendary Army medical commander who had overseen combat hospital operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and classified locations throughout the Middle East. Morrison's reputation was built on impossible medical missions, establishing field hospitals under artillery bombardment, coordinating mass casualty operations during major offensives, and making life-or-death medical decisions that had saved thousands of American combat veterans. Her presence at any medical facility indicated the highest levels of military medical importance and strategic oversight. The inspection began at dawn with systematic review of medical departments, patient care facilities, and administrative operations. Santos maintained her corridor position near the executive conference rooms, mopping floors and cleaning surfaces with the same methodical precision that had characterized her entire hospital assignment. General Morrison moved through the facility conducting detailed assessments of medical capabilities, staff competence, and operational readiness that supported wounded warrior care and rehabilitation. Her inspection was comprehensive and demanding, reflecting military standards that ensured combat veterans received the highest quality medical treatment available. As Morrison completed her review of the trauma surgery department and moved toward the administrative wing for briefings with hospital leadership, she walked down the main corridor where Santos was performing routine floor maintenance near the executive conference rooms. Morrison's movement was routine. Senior commanders often transitioned between multiple facility areas during comprehensive inspections, and the cleaning activities continued without interruption around her official duties. But as Morrison approached the corridor intersection where Santos was working, her attention was drawn to something that made her stop mid-stride and stare with obvious recognition. Morrison's battle-tested expression shifted from routine inspection assessment to something far more complex. Shock layered with respect, recognition mixed with what appeared to be profound reverence. She observed Santos with laser intensity, as if she was witnessing someone she had never expected to encounter in a hospital custodial role, or seeing something that challenged everything she understood about personnel assignments at Walter Reed Medical Center. The administrative corridor remained busy with normal hospital activity, doctors reviewing patient charts, nurses coordinating shift changes, and support staff maintaining facility operations. But Morrison's attention had become completely focused on the woman mopping floors near the conference room entrance. Then, without warning or explanation, Brigadier General Morrison did something that shocked everyone in the administrative corridor. She stopped walking, came to rigid military attention, and delivered a crisp, formal salute directly toward the woman pushing a mop bucket down the hospital hallway. "Captain Santos," Morrison said, her voice carrying clearly through the corridor with unmistakable respect and recognition. The administrative corridor fell into stunned silence. Every doctor, nurse, and hospital administrator within hearing distance turned to witness what had captured their commanding general's attention with such obvious military protocol and formal recognition. Santos looked up from her mop bucket, and for the first time since her assignment to custodial duties, her invisible demeanor shifted dramatically. Her dark eyes met Morrison's with the kind of mutual recognition that occurred between warriors who had shared impossible missions and life-or-death decisions in places where American service members had fought and died together. She returned the salute with military precision that transformed her instantly from hospital janitor into something entirely different. A combat veteran acknowledging a fellow warrior across a corridor full of people who had no understanding of what they were witnessing. "General Morrison," Santos replied quietly, her voice carrying an authority and familiarity that no one in the corridor had ever heard from the quiet custodial worker. "Captain," Morrison continued, her tone filled with unmistakable respect and what sounded like profound gratitude. "I should have known that if there was a medical facility caring for our wounded warriors, you would find a way to continue serving them." The exchange hit the administrative corridor like an artillery strike. The quiet janitor they had been ignoring for months was actually a captain being recognized with full military honors by one of the Army's most senior medical commanders. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's chief of staff who had been observing the inspection activities, stepped forward with obvious confusion and growing curiosity. General Morrison, I believe there may be some misunderstanding about personnel assignments. This is Elena Santos from our Custodial Services Department. Morrison's response revealed information that would fundamentally change how everyone in the corridor understood what they had been witnessing during Santos's entire hospital assignment. Dr. Mitchell, Morrison said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded medical operations in combat zones. There's no misunderstanding. You've been working alongside someone whose medical expertise and combat leadership have directly saved more American lives than most people could save in 10 lifetimes. The revelation struck the administrative corridor with devastating force. The quiet custodial worker they had been taking for granted was actually someone whose military medical experience and leadership capabilities exceeded anything most hospital personnel had ever encountered. Nurse practitioner Davis, who had observed Santos's unusual familiarity with medical equipment, approached with obvious respect and amazement. General Morrison, could you provide context about Captain Santos's medical background? Morrison's answer provided insight into military medical service that most civilian medical professionals never encountered. Captain Santos was my chief medical officer during Operation Desert Storm, a classified medical mission where her surgical expertise and combat leadership prevented what would have been catastrophic casualties during a mass casualty event that tested every limit of military medical capability. The weight of Morrison's words settled over the administrative corridor like incoming mortar fire. Desert Storm was legendary among military medical personnel, a mission so classified and challenging that most details remained buried in Pentagon medical files, known only to the medical professionals who had survived it. During that operation, Morrison continued, Captain Santos performed combat surgery under conditions that would have broken most medical professionals. Her surgical skills under fire and medical decision-making under impossible pressure saved 89 American service members who would have died without her intervention. Dr. Rodriguez, who had noticed Santos's tactical awareness during medical emergencies, stepped forward with obvious curiosity about the mission that had forged such mutual respect between Morrison and Santos. General, if you're able to share details, what specific circumstances during Desert Storm required that level of surgical expertise under combat conditions? Morrison's response revealed the brutal reality of military medical operations where traditional hospital environments had been replaced by field conditions under enemy fire. Our forward medical facility came under sustained artillery attack during the largest mass casualty event of the operation. Enemy forces had targeted our medical operations specifically, and we were treating 127 critically wounded service members while taking direct fire that destroyed most of our surgical equipment. The administrative corridor absorbed this information with the gravity of medical professionals who understood how quickly surgical operations could deteriorate into survival situations where medical expertise became meaningless without extraordinary leadership and courage under fire. Captain Santos established emergency surgical operations in a bunker while coordinating medical evacuations under artillery bombardment. Morrison continued. Her ability to perform complex surgery without proper equipment while maintaining medical team coordination under extreme combat stress turned certain medical disaster into operational success. Dr. Mitchell asked the question that everyone was thinking. General, what specific surgical procedures did Captain Santos perform that saved those service members' lives? Morrison's answer provided insight into combat medicine that most medical professionals never witnessed. She performed emergency thoracotomies, vascular repairs, and damage control surgery using improvised instruments while enemy artillery was destroying the medical facility around her. Her surgical innovations under impossible conditions established protocols that are still used in military medical training today. The explanation revealed understanding of surgical operations that integrated medical expertise, tactical thinking, and leadership capabilities that could function effectively when traditional medical infrastructure had collapsed under enemy attack. More importantly, Morrison added, She made these surgical decisions while simultaneously coordinating medical team movements under fire, establishing casualty collection points during artillery bombardment, and maintaining team morale during a medical mission that appeared hopeless to everyone except her. Nurse Davis was beginning to understand why Morrison had shown such obvious respect and formal military recognition. General Morrison, how did Captain Santos transition from that level of surgical responsibility to custodial assignment here at Walter Reed? Morrison's response reflected the complex career paths that characterize the most experienced military medical professionals dealing with post-traumatic stress and transition challenges. After Desert Storm, Captain Santos experienced severe combat-related PTSD that made traditional medical practice impossible. Her assignment to support roles here allows her to continue serving wounded warriors while managing the psychological effects of her combat medical experience. The administrative corridor was beginning to understand that Santos's custodial assignment wasn't career failure or professional decline. It was a therapeutic transition that allowed her to maintain connection to military medical service while recovering from the psychological trauma of saving lives under impossible combat conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison announced to the assembled hospital staff, for the past months, you've had the privilege of working alongside someone whose surgical expertise and combat leadership represent the absolute pinnacle of military medical excellence. Her choice to serve in support roles while managing post-combat trauma demonstrates the kind of continued dedication that defines the finest military medical professionals. Dr. Rodriguez, who had noticed Santos's unconscious medical awareness during emergency situations, was beginning to understand the depth of surgical expertise that had been hidden behind custodial duties. Captain Santos, Rodriguez said with obvious respect, your spatial awareness during medical emergencies and familiarity with trauma procedures makes complete sense now. You've been unconsciously maintaining medical readiness even while performing custodial work. Santos's response revealed the ongoing struggle of combat veterans transitioning from high-intensity military medical service to civilian hospital environments. Dr. Rodriguez, combat medical experience changes how you see everything. Even while mopping floors, I couldn't stop conducting tactical assessment of medical capabilities and emergency preparedness. The instincts never completely go away. Over the following weeks, Captain Santos transitioned from her therapeutic custodial assignment to graduated participation in medical consultation and trauma surgery assistance programs designed for combat veterans recovering from operational stress. Her combination of extraordinary surgical experience and ongoing psychological recovery created unique opportunities for both personal healing and contribution to wounded warrior care. What Captain Santos represents, Morrison explained to the hospital leadership, is military medical expertise that has been tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Her surgical knowledge and combat medical experience can contribute to improving care for wounded warriors while supporting her own recovery from combat trauma. Santos worked with hospital psychiatric services and surgical departments to develop transition programs that allowed combat medical veterans to maintain connection to medical service while addressing post-traumatic stress and psychological recovery needs. The operations I've been involved in, Santos explained to the hospital staff, taught me that military medical service leaves psychological scars that require time and support to heal. But the desire to continue serving wounded warriors never disappears, even when traditional medical practice becomes impossible. Her transition programs emphasized graduated re-engagement with medical responsibilities, psychological support for combat trauma recovery, and integration of combat medical expertise with civilian hospital capabilities in ways that supported both veteran recovery and patient care. Dr. Mitchell, who had initially been confused by Morrison's recognition, became one of Santos's most dedicated advocates for veteran medical transition programs. Captain Santos, your approach to managing combat trauma while maintaining medical service has shown us that recovery and continued contribution aren't mutually exclusive. You've demonstrated that healing and serving can happen simultaneously. Nurse Davis was particularly influenced by Santos's understanding of combat medical psychology and trauma recovery. Ma'am, your experience has taught me that medical professionals who've served in combat need specialized support to transition back to civilian medical practice. Your journey shows that recovery is possible while maintaining connection to medical service. The veteran medical transition programs that Captain Santos developed were eventually adopted throughout military medical facilities, establishing new standards for supporting combat medical professionals dealing with post-traumatic stress while maintaining their desire to serve wounded warriors. Her methods influenced military medical transition services worldwide and enhanced support for veteran medical professionals globally. But perhaps Santos's greatest contribution was demonstrating that true medical service often requires integration of extraordinary surgical expertise with the humility to accept help during psychological recovery, and that healing from combat trauma doesn't diminish previous accomplishments or future contributions to military medical service. The story of Captain Viper Santos became inspirational throughout Walter Reed Medical Center, shared with new staff as an example of how extraordinary medical expertise often hides behind therapeutic assignments and recovery processes. Her example reminded medical professionals that the most valuable service members are often those whose true capabilities remain concealed while they heal from the psychological costs of serving others under impossible conditions. The most important lesson you can learn here, Morrison would tell new medical staff, is that exceptional surgical expertise often comes from people managing invisible wounds. The person mopping floors might be someone who's performed medical miracles that saved more lives than anyone you'll ever meet. The custodial assignment had provided Santos with the therapeutic space needed to process combat trauma while maintaining connection to medical service. Her gradual transition back to surgical consultation demonstrated that recovery from post-traumatic stress was possible while honoring previous accomplishments and continuing contributions to wounded warrior care. Years later, when Captain Santos transitioned to full surgical practice specializing in combat trauma, her legacy lived on in the veteran medical transition programs she developed and in the understanding that true medical excellence often requires acknowledging when heroes need time to heal from the psychological costs of their heroism. Her story reminded everyone that in military medicine, as in all veteran services, the most dangerous assumptions are those we make about people based on their current assignment rather than their proven performance under fire, because the most exceptional medical professionals are often those who choose to hide their extraordinary capabilities while recovering from the psychological wounds that come from saving lives under impossible conditions. The moment when General Morrison had stopped to salute had lasted only seconds, but its impact continued for years, reminding everyone that extraordinary medical expertise often hides behind the most humble assignments, and that the people performing the simplest tasks may be the ones with the most complex stories of sacrifice, service, and survival. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever discovered that someone you knew in a support or service role actually possessed extraordinary professional expertise that they kept hidden while recovering from personal challenges? Have you encountered people whose humble work concealed remarkable capabilities and heroic backgrounds? Tell us in the comments about the moments when you realized you'd been working alongside someone whose expertise exceeded your understanding. And if you believe that true heroes often serve quietly while healing from the costs of their heroism, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. No one calls her the janitor anymore, not after that salute.